I'm assigning a project over spring break. I'm not a very nice person, but it's due in 2 weeks, so you got the whole 2 weeks to do it. Just kind of give you a look ahead and where we're headed. I want you to set up a new version of Fedora, version 28, 29, whatever, using either VirtualBox or VMware, your choice. VirtualBox is probably easier to set up an appliance. And I'll upload this document. Here's a guide that pretty well guides you step by step how to do VirtualBox. It was so easy, I was shocked. I think it's a lot easier in VMware now that I got that instruction guide. Here's a download site for appliances already set up. If I go to it, this is what it looks like. And if you click on VM images and choose either VirtualBox or VMware images, they actually both take you to the same place. Not quite sure why they have them separate. But if I choose VirtualBox, brings me here. And if I scroll down, you see all the different versions of Linux out there. We want Fedora. And you see it says download VirtualBox VDI image. If I click that, it comes up over here. And you have this tab chose for VirtualBox. And I downloaded the 64-bit earlier today. So I was checking to make sure that it was installed on that PC. But she didn't show up. Or hasn't yet. The VMware link is here. So if you're in VMware, here's info on this. I think info lies a little bit. It says your root account password is osboxes.org. I doubt that. Either that or I've mistyped it like 10 times now. I've tried that over and over, and it's a little asterisk, so you can't see what you're typing, but I'm pretty sure it's not that. But you click this VirtualBox here, and you download it, and it downloads as a 7Z file. If you're wondering how in the world do you work with a 7Z file, best utility I think for it is one called pzip. And that, going into computer science, this is one you should have as one of your tools available. It's free. If I come here, the best one to download is this pzip portable. You can put it on your flash drive. That's what I have. I have it on my flash drive. So anytime I run across any file that whatever I'm on doesn't support the extracting, then I can just run pzip and unextract it. One of my machines at home, I downloaded the pzip 64-bit because I thought, well, might as well have it on the machine. And it took over my part of my File Explorer, which I wasn't really happy about. Because in File Explorer, if you right-click something, you can say extract and also compress it and so forth with the default utility that comes with Windows. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. When you right-click on it, it's just like use pzip to extract and so forth, which is fine. But if I'm trying to show create a video or show a student who doesn't have it installed how to use the default compression utility in Windows, then it doesn't work well. So again, pzip portable I like. There's other ones out there. There's like a WinZip, I think. That's like a virus. You can use it free for a period of time, which I did, and works fantastic. And then it quits working after a period of time. And if you uninstall it, it doesn't put your Windows compression utilities back. So you're left with nothing. So they kind of ensure that they want you to buy their product by doing that. Anyway, that's PZip. Now, once you download that appliance is somebody's already set up the operating system for you. So you have to do very little work. And that's the idea. You can be up and running after a 20-minute download of that huge file. After you extract it, you can be up and running in about 5 minutes using Fedora. You do have to use Fedora. Picky about that. I don't want to be Ubuntu. I don't want it to be anything else. It has to be Fedora. There's a reason why I'm picky on that. A lot of you are going on to Wichita State. And Wichita State has emphasized to us that they use Fedora. And they expect people coming in to already have some exposure on how to use Fedora. There's one computer science class I took at Wichita State, and they didn't cover all of Linux. And I've been in, and I hadn't used Linux for a long time, and it was actually more of Unix flavored that I used. And I was lost until I got myself up to speed on different commands. And so this is my part of being compliant with them saying they want people to know Fedora. I know not all of you may be going to Wichita State, but for those who are, that's what they told us. That's why I don't want you to have Ubuntu or anything else. I want you to actually be using what they told me that they want people to know. Now, after you get installed, I want you to experiment with the terminal, and I'm going to go over there in a minute and show you the different utilities and so forth, and I won't show you everything. That's a 16-week class to show you everything. But I want you to be able to set up a folder, change to a folder, create a new file with the editor. Windows version is fine. And the reason why is if you download the VirtualBox, it does not come with a Nano editor installed. And you have to have root access to install it, I believe, from what I was playing with earlier. And if you don't have a password to the root, then you can't set it up. So it's best that you play with it. There's one called Vi. I'm not very good with it. I might try to stumble around and show you some basics of it. But I'll also show you the Windows one too. You should be able to rename files, delete files, and change permissions. Well, after that, you want to create a C program, actually 2 C programs. You create your source code. Let's say it's named test.c. Compile it using GCC space test.c-o test. And I'll talk more about what all that means when we look at it. I want you to be able to change the permissions to execute for everyone. And 755 is not a bad one to use. And then you run it by doing a /test. You're going to create 2 programs. And the program should not be too tough. First one will just print hello world. So it's kind of like a one line get started in Linux land type of deal. Second one will take 2 command line arguments, numbers, then we'll add them and print the result. And I give you a hint here. Google GCC how to pass numeric command line arguments into your C program. I hadn't done this for a while. That's what I Googled and found it. Part of going to computer science is researching a little bit, exploring. Didn't have to do much exploring on that because I knew the keywords to use. Now that's kind of the tricky part sometimes, knowing what keywords to use. I did not put command line arguments. I put parameters. And as a result, I had a lot of code examples came up where they just had like a function where they passed in parameters. And it's like, no, that's not what I wanted. And then finally one page referenced command line arguments, and I remembered, yeah, that's what it's called. You also have to use an ATOI. And what this does is it takes a string, converts it to an integer. Because when they come in as command line arguments, they'll come in as an array of characters or a string. And so you need to convert those to an integer so you can then add them together. So you should run it something like this. You do a /test space 3 space 4. 3 and 4 are being passed in as command line arguments. And then your program will bring those in, it'll convert them to an integer, it'll add them together, and then it'll print the result. So not a real complicated program. You just have to research how to do the pass the numeric command line arguments and play with it. And then I want a shell script that will run both of those compiled programs. And I'll talk more about shell scripts here. Then finally, you got all that done. You got used to working with Linux a little bit. I want you to install a screen capturing software, demonstrate the items above with sound or text to the side if you're a time traveler from the 1990s. Have you ever seen those videos?
I haven't.
No. The people upload these videos, and they're not old videos, but they're upload these videos, and there won't be any sound, or there'll be this really loud, blaring music. Yeah, and then sometimes they'll put text to the side, and you have to read the text as you're watching them demonstrate something. I'm sitting there, can you not afford a $10 microphone? But maybe they can't speak. I don't know. I'm not sure why they don't actually talk. Yeah, but you run across those. There's one I was looking at today. It looked like a really good video. We're going to demonstrate because I beat my head up every Wednesday trying to get the assembly language figured out. It's a nightmare. I hate that. I hate that class. I wish I could find somebody else to teach it. It's so low level. Now I'm going to introduce you guys to assembly language at some point this semester, because I want you to at least run like a very basic program from within a C program, and see how do you merge the two together. Assembly language allows you to communicate with a machine at a lower level, directly programming the registers and so forth. So, anyway, upload the resulting video to YouTube and post the URL for the video. And potential software, techsmith.com, screen.capture.html, and that's linked to the Snagit software. That's what I'm recording this with. It's really easy. They got a free trial. It's like 15 days or something like that. So you can uninstall it after you're done. But again, then you just need to figure out how to get that up on YouTube. And what you're going to turn in is you're going to turn in that URL of your YouTube video. So. Now, there's probably a lot of questions because we haven't gone over a lot of this, but is there any questions now on those steps? Yeah. Okay, so let's say you have you're getting ready to do the VirtualBox or VMware. A virtual appliance is technology allows you to run like an operating system inside of an operating system. So instead of setting up a separate partition or a separate machine to run Linux, to run Windows Server, so forth, you can use a virtual appliance. And you set it up, and then when you run it, it's just like you just running another operating system right on your Windows or whatever system you're using. The Windows Server, we have access to download that if you want to set up a virtual appliance for that. We don't have the Windows operating system for all of them. But I think we have Windows 10 at least. So if you just want to play, it's kind of a safe environment. It creates a operating system embedded in a few files or a folder, depending upon how you set it up. You can set it up to put it in like one big file or separate files. It prompts you at some point on those. It warns if you do them separate files, it's easier to transfer to a new PC if you just want to copy that folder over and have it up and running on a new one. But it also slows it down. So they say the bigger file is a better option. We use this at this technology, not virtual machines in this form, but we use this at IFR. We had machines on a production floor that did not have hard drives. So they had no hard drives at all. I don't remember if they had floppies or not. But what they booted off of was the network card, and network card pointed to the network where the very scaled down operating system was. And so the operating system is running and the program is running. It was just straight off the network. When you take a hard drive out of a computer, it becomes a very small computer. It's not much left at that point. And because you don't need a fan, because the hard drive is what really gets it, overheating. Or maybe you don't need as much of a fan. I don't remember if those had fans in them or not. But just the hard drive is where a lot of that heat comes from. At least for what we were doing. The concept of running an operating system not on your PC has a lot of variations on that. Last semester, when I was teaching the app development for the Macs, had an individual that hadn't bought a Mac and didn't realize you needed to buy the Mac, so I need to make sure I put that in the requirements of that so you can see it when you sign up for a class. But I was exploring, and they got this Mac in a Cloud, I think it's called, where you can pay $20 a month or something like that, and you can run a Mac from your Windows. So it's all through the cloud. I thought it was a little slow, but if you don't want to pay the $1,500 for a brand new MacBook, then it's a pretty good option. Virtual machines are something you run across a lot in computer science. One college here in Kansas, Hutch, they actually offer a class that all it's about is setting up those virtual environments. So setting up virtual machines and using probably a lot of VMware products, maybe VirtualBox. The idea is, again, to save time, save resources. Sometimes it doesn't work as easy as you might think. But anyway, that's what that is. When you run it, it'll bring up a version of the Linux or whatever you're working with. It'll pop up. The user is OSBoxes or osboxes.org. You see that in the info tab I showed you. The password is osboxes.org. Let's see. When it comes up, you won't see this terminal here. You'll see a screen like this. If you click Activities in the upper left-hand corner, it's not real obvious because there isn't like if you don't look closely, you won't even see the activities. You're sitting there, well, there's nothing to click. But the activities up here will bring down this menu. Here's the Firefox browser you can use. And the neat part about this is if you infect your Linux by going to some place that has a malware of some sort, you just delete that folder, unzip it again, you're back up and running. So because you haven't infected your machine. Seemed like I read last semester if it was possible to jump from a virtual appliance to your operating system, and I don't think I got any clear answer on that, but it's hardly ever happens. I don't even know how it could unless it infected your BIOS or something like that. Don't know what that is. It's some kind of mail package. Never have used Evolution. Used Pine and so forth. Rhythmbox I've never have used. The files that's right here. That's where you can create folders and create files and so forth and edit them, which we'll look at. There's software here. So if you want to install software, go here. There's also show applications here, which we'll talk about. Over on this side, there's some networking stuff up here, but the important part up here I want to point out is you see this power off option. If I do the drop down here and move that, you see here's the power off. So this is how you can shut it down. You don't have to shut it down. When you close this, you can just suspend it, which means when you bring it up, it'll be in the exact same place where it was. You saw that window I had up there. That's from yesterday's class. So it brought up that terminal that I was working on. Okay, over to here. If I click the files, it's very much like Windows, very user-friendly. But you're going to find that you need to know how to do the terminal, not just the user-friendly part here. And there's a reason why. Those of you going into computer science, electrical engineering, at least in computer science, you potentially will work on servers, Linux servers, and so forth. They're popular for hosting websites. Now, Linux by itself is very stable. It's hard to hack into. It's got a lot of good security features. It's open source, so everybody can see the code, and they pointed out issues and so forth. Unlike Microsoft that locks everything down, you can't see your code and all that. But as a consequence of that, you can't have the GUI on there. Whenever you put a GUI operating system on any platform, it opens up ports, opens up holes, ways you can hack in. So your best security is you don't have that nice graphical interface. At IFR, we had servers, Linux servers that were actually internal, but they didn't have the graphical side on there. I hated to go work on them because I'd have to go in the server room and they were completely terminal. The what? Command based, yeah. I'm not sure why they had that level of security on there, and the password to get into those, and maybe they were hooked up externally. I don't know. But the password to get into it, to give it to me on a piece of paper, have it written down. Some of you have heard this. And it'd be long. It'd be like an entire sentence. And it'd have a bunch of weird characters in there. Instead of the one, it'd put L. Instead of the at, instead of the A, it'd put at. All kinds of different things. And I'd go in there, and I'd have that piece of paper in my hand, and I'd sit there and type in that password in the server room. Not one time could I actually type that in correctly. I'd always mistype something. And it was always asterisks that appeared. In the case you're wondering, when I made that comment earlier saying that I've tried that 10 times to type in OS boxes, because since I can't see what I'm typing, I'm hoping that I'm not mistyping something. I figure if I do it 10 times, then I got to be typing in right. One of those 10 times, statistics-wise, one of those 10 times would have had to have been correct. There's just no way I could type it in wrong 10 times. Anyway, I couldn't type it in correctly. And they never let me forget that. They'd come in and I'd ask, say, can you come in and type in this password? And they'd come in, type it in so I could do my work. And they ridiculed me. Pretty secure, though, isn't it? If you have the password in your hand and you can't sit there and type the silly thing in, that doesn't get any more secure than that. But anyway, they didn't have these. They were internal, like I said. So, again, I'm not sure why they didn't have nice GUI on there. For our Oracle, we had a Linux box, and it had a nice GUI because our database was for internal use. Nobody external was going to be going into it. I suppose you could say, well, somebody in your company could hack into it. Yeah, but you kind of trust the people in your company, typically. So we had nice GUI. I like that. I could go in there and I could click and so forth. But that's why you have to know the terminal side. Okay. Now you see some of these have different different icons on them. This is obviously a folder, file, test.sh, testing.sh. That's a curious one. I don't know why it has padlock on there. I'm not that great at the GUI side. Not that great sometimes on the terminal side. I really have struggled sometimes. But got different files here. If you got a this ABC file.txt here, you can click it and you see it selects it. And just like Windows, you can move it, to wherever you want. If you right-click on it, just like in Windows, you see there's cut, copy, all the different things you could want to do with this. There's also an Open with Text editor, which you can achieve by double-clicking on it. Maybe. There it goes. And then it puts that up there. There's a tar file. You can change to other directories by clicking these. Click Documents, go there. Downloads, so forth. Home is where all your files are. There's also other locations down here. And if you click other locations, you can access the main computer here. And these are the standard, most of them are the standard folders that you will see on every Linux machine. Every machine has a bin, boot, dev, etc, home. Well, I shouldn't say home. Probably has a home. Not sure if everyone has these. MNT, mount, that should be their options. So a lot of these are kind of default. SRV. Doesn't ring a bell, but then again, my memory's not that great. Run. Is there any questions on that part so far? Okay, now the terminal. If I click Activities here, I come down here to Show Applications. And it comes up here, and here's all your default ones. So you got text editor here. This is where you go directly in the text editor if you're creating a new file. This is where some of you will have to go if you do not have the, if you download the VirtualBox and you don't have the Nano editor. You don't want to use Vi. Utilities. That's where your terminal is going to be at. So if I go, by the way, before I show this, text editor, if I double click that, does just what you think. It brings up the little editor here. And we'll create a file with that eventually. Okay. So go to Utilities. Pops up. You should see a terminal there somewhere. If I double click the terminal, it'll come up here. You can make it a little bit bigger by zooming in if you need to. And like I said, those servers that you had access, this is oftentimes the only thing you have that you can get into. Linux can be a pretty small operating system. So if you're wanting to use the power of Linux on a device you're designing, then you can do this. You can put Linux on a box you're designing. When I left IFR, they were experimenting with putting a scaled down version of Windows on their spectrum analyzers that they were developing. When you're developing, this is more for electrical engineering side, but if you're developing a spectrum analyzer, you wouldn't want to sit there and spend 5 years developing the operating system. Why would you? There's already ones existing. So you take existing operating systems and you put those on your boxes. I don't know how that came out in terms of having the Windows operating system on the spectrum analyzers. People, of course, want nice GUIs that they can click and so forth. But then again, Linux has that nice GUI if you wanted to add that in there. They don't worry about security so much, the electrical engineers at IFR, because if you got a spectrum analyzer, you're hooking it up to a piece of equipment. It's not going to be hooked into the network to the internet all the time. You might hook it in for specific purposes, but not constant. Okay, so I don't know where I'm at here. There's a command called pwd, print working directory, and this tells me where I'm at. I'm at /home/OS boxes. It is case sensitive. If you do uppercase P and uppercase W and uppercase D and press enter, it'll come back and tell you command not found. Sometimes if you don't know where you're at, you type the pwd and then you can figure it out. There's a command called ls, and this lists your files. Some of you are probably better at Linux than I am. You could know what these colors indicate and so forth. I can guess based upon knowing what I know about these files. But the blue looks like folders. The green... I'm guessing the green are ones that I've marked as executable. So I don't know why I would have marked all files.txt as executable. Yeah, I don't know exactly what all these numbers or all these colors mean. You won't see those colors on necessarily every system you work on. But ls lists your files. Now, there's an ls space dash al. This presents a longer listing and also shows hidden files. And so here I can see the date it was created, the size. I can see the rights over here. And we'll talk more about that. But let me see, readme, sed, sort. Some of these I was just playing, trying to break it in the Linux class. So sed isn't something I probably should have right there. Testing dot okay, RWX. Now, I don't see my all files because it scrolled off the screen. I can use my mouse wheel to go up. And there's all files. And okay, yeah, for some reason I marked it as executable. So it looks like the green are all the ones that are executable. Now there's a lot you can do with the ls. Again, ls lists your files. I don't know what it stands for, to be honest. List something, maybe. If you do a list space, and it is you do need spaces on some of these. Like if I do ls no space al, it'll tell you command not found. So I do an ls space dash dash help. The dash dash help is what you can put after many commands to get options available. This comes up and gives you different options. Again, it's scrolled off the screen, so I can use my mouse wheel to go up. If you don't have a mouse wheel on a server you're working on, I'll show you a different way. These are all the different commands you can enter in. ls-a, do not ignore entries starting with a dot. Dash uppercase A, do not list implied dot and dot dot. Dash B, dash uppercase B, C, uppercase C. All the different things you can do. This is why Linux is considered so powerful, is because they've made it so you can do about everything under the sun. Dash uppercase R, that's kind of a nice one. That lists subdirectories recursively. And gives you some information. I wouldn't say it's user-friendly. Time style argument can be full ISO, long ISO, what in the world's all this talking about? So again, yeah, it takes a while to get good at Linux. My goal is, again, not to make you an expert at Linux. The goal is to just get you so you can fumble around in it. And if you go to Wichita State, you can at least list a file. You can at least edit a file, do all that. Now, if you're on a non-GUI based machine, you probably don't have a mouse. And by the way, you do an up arrow key, brings up the previous command. You can do this pipe symbol. That's above your enter. I do shift and then that, and does a little pipe symbol. And you can type more. And when you press enter on that, it'll bring it up a page at a time. So then you can read your first page. When you're ready for your second page, you press space. You're ready for your next page, you press space. There's probably a way to go backwards. I have no clue what it is. I probably did at one point in time. Space, space. You get to the end and it exits out. So that's useful to remember. Again, what I did there is you do your ls dash whatever dash dash help and then pipe sign more. Now that pipe sign more works on any command. Like when I did an ls dash, try that again, dash al, part of it scrolled off the screen, didn't it? So if I put a pipe more on there, that takes your output from that one command and sends it as input into this other command. So pipes it in, basically, is how they refer to it. It brings up my first file. You know something that's lost, though? Colors, right? So I lost the colors. Do a space, goes to the next page, space goes to the next page, and you keep pressing space and it takes you down. Okay. You do not want to sit there unless your goal is to become a Linux engineer and memorize all of those commands. The idea is you can do the dash dash help to read it, or there's a utility called man. And if you do man space ls, this will bring up the man pages of ls, kind of manual, so manual pages. Now when you do that, it comes up here, and here's our first page. Tells us what the ls is. List directory contents. Still doesn't give me any idea why they call it ls instead of ld. There it says list information about files, so forth. Tells what these do. Not a whole lot more useful than the dash dash help in this case. I'm pressing space to go there. You can do H for help. It'll tell you the way to go backwards. Or you can do a Q to quit to exit out of the man page. The man pages exist for about any command. If I did a man pwd, comes up here, and I didn't even know pwd had other options. Dash uppercase L, dash uppercase P. Not a whole lot you can do with it. Dash dash help, dash dash version. So pwd dash dash. I wonder if all of them have version. Invalid option. Was it 1? Invalid option. I thought it had a version there. Maybe not. It says -- version. Output and version information and exit. I don't know about that. Okay, so I do an ls here. Got some files. To make a directory, if you do mkdir, and maybe I call it C programs. So that's how you make a directory. If you do an ls, you should now see C programs on the screen, right over here. I don't oftentimes remove a directory, obviously, but I think it's rmdir, C programs. Now if I do an ls, you see the C programs is gone. Now if I make directory and I do a C programs, and I'm going to go to C programs. How you change to that directory is you do a cd space C programs. And again, if you're not quite sure where in the world you're at, you simply do a pwd, and that gives you the directory structure. I'm at /home/osboxes/C programs. To go back one folder, one directory, I do cd space ... Again, you have to have the space there. If you try to do a cd ... it won't work. Now if I do pwd, you see we're now at /home/osboxes. If you want to clear the screen, you type clear, and that clears the screen. Now you can go directly to a folder. You don't have to keep doing the ... to go back, or cd space the folder. I can do a cd space /home. And that'll absolutely go to /home, no matter where I'm at. So if I'm in my C programs, by the way, as you start typing, if you've typed enough for it to tell what in the world you're supposed to do, if you do a tab, it'll do the completion for you. So I'm right here at /home/osboxes/C programs. I can do a cd space /home, and that'll go directly to the home folder. Now I do an ls. There's lost and found, OS boxes. If I do a cd space ... again, that goes back one folder. And now I'm at my root. So this is your main root folder, where everything is branched off from. If I do ls, you can see there's a bin, sbin. Some of those are links to other locations. So they provide an easy way for you to get to it without knowing where it's located at. I can do a cd space bin. And again, pwd, I'm at the /bin now. And now if I do an ls, you'll see a lot of the programs you can run. And I couldn't tell you what a lot of these are. Yum, I think that's the install program for Fedora. It's called something different on other Linux machines. If I scroll up, a lot of programs that you'd have to know to master Linux, isn't there? Luckily, you don't have to know all those. You just, as a few maybe you work with. Eventually I get there. Here, GCC. That's our compiler for C. That is what you're actually running when you go to code blocks. When you install code blocks, at some point in time it said that the C compiler it found was GCC. all they've done is they've taken that program and they put a nice little GUI front on it. So it's very easy to click here, click there, and so forth. In real life, in Linux land, where you just got terminal, you don't have that nice. And so, again, I'm not going to have you do every program from now on in Linux, just a couple of them, so you get a taste for it and you get an idea how things go. Anyway, lots of programs. Again, knowing where you're at, I'm at /bin. I can go to /home/OS boxes. Again, I don't know what it is exactly, if it's OS boxes or osboxes.org. If I type enough and then do my tab, it does the completion for me. So that's really handy. In C programs, tab does the completion, and then go back there. Now, when you run programs, it knows to go out there and find those. And how it does that, the echo prints something to your screen. And the $path says, where's it looking at? And so these are already pointing to the bin folder. And so when you run a program, that's how it makes a connection. Part of the problem that you may have is a particular program may be in multiple locations. And so you've updated one version in this one place, but maybe it's not updated another place. Another problem people have is if you're going into computer security, people can hack into, if they have the rights to this folder, they can put their own copy of LS. Like LS is a program somewhere. It's either bin or SBin. LS. There's LS. So this right here is what gets run, this program, whenever you do an ls command. And that may seem weird, ls, but first ls here is just list the file. This is the program name. If I can put this, a copy of this, somewhere in your path and have it as malware of some sort, then whenever you run ls, you're running my version. You're not running the official Linux version. So that's part of people that will harden a system down. They'll look for those issues. Now, by default, Linux, I think it should lock it down pretty good, but maybe that's a false statement. Because you see a lot of bins here, don't you? /user/bin, /user/sbin, /user/local/bin, /user/share/modules bin. Don't know if there's any files under some of those. Let's see what's under there. Not very many, right? I don't have rights to this folder because I'm not under as a root. That's why if you get access as a root access, you've heard of rootkits. If they can put a rootkit on there and you get root access, you can do all kinds of wild things on a Linux server. Open up holes and so forth. Okay, now I have no clue where I'm at. I'm under /user/share/module/bin. Let's say I want to go home. I do cd space and the little squiggly that's in the upper left-hand corner below your escape. This takes you home. Now if I do a pwd, you see I'm back at /home/OS boxes. Questions on that so far? No? Have you seen Linux, some of you?
Here and there.
Here and there. I think John has Ubuntu on his computer, so he probably uses it all the time. It's on Macs. So there's a version of it. I'm not sure if it's Linux or Unix or their own creation, but it has a little terminal you can run on there. Which might explain why Macs have less issues than Windows. Is because it's based on a kind of an open source type of setup. It's not easy to configure. It's not easy to get everything working, but it's more secure. When I was at IFR, is always kind of humorous because it seemed like we had to reboot a Windows machine, a Windows server. We'd have to reboot it maybe once a week. It just had to, because when you run a Windows program, it takes memory, and when it's done running, it should release that memory. Part of that's referring to like garbage, with the memory, that you free it up and give it back so you can use it for another process. If Windows programs aren't written correctly, it will not free that memory up. And used to be Excel was written poorly. Every time you went in and used Excel, when I was at IFR, and this was about 20 years ago, that version of Excel, people would go in and out of Excel all day long. And each time they went into Excel and went out, it took a little bit more memory and didn't give it back. So by the end of the day, they'd be calling the help desk saying, my computer's got really slow as the day has gone on. And we'd say, well, do you use Excel? And they'd say, yeah. And they'd say, well, it's because you're going in and out. Reboot your computer, you'll have your memory back. So that freeing up the memory isn't automatic. Linux doesn't really seem to have that issue for whatever reason. The Linux servers, we'd have to reboot those maybe once every 6 months. It was just once in a blue moon when you'd actually have to reset it. Okay. If I go to my C programs, do an LS, I have nothing here. There's an editor called Nano, and if you can get it installed on VirtualBox, you're a lot better than I am. I couldn't get it installed earlier. But if you can get that installed, then fantastic. It kept telling me I had to have root access, and I couldn't get it signed in as a root. But you do Nano and test.c. So we're going to create a C program. Comes up with a nice editor. I love this. Used to be called Pico, P-I-C-O. And then they changed the name of it to Nano. And to me, it's one of the better editors in the terminal environment. Well, what I'm going to type in is this code here. So I want to pound include and then my stdio.h. I'm not sure of that coloring scheme, why it's doing that. I don't think it's smart enough to recognize it's a C program, and those are two different ones. So I think there's another reason behind that. Then we want our int main void. Main void. Then in here, you're going to put whatever. Printf. I'll create a hello world /n. And I don't remember what it was. I think it was return 0. So you write your program. Yeah, I don't think punt is a C is a C command, so I don't know what the nature is of the coloring scheme there, but it's not doing the red for the commands or anything like that. Okay, now down here, this is why I like it, because it's very user friendly. You see it has little tilde or yeah, that's tilde hat. I don't know what that is. Caret. Okay. Keep thinking statistics because that's like p hat and and y hat. Some of you can see in statistics if you haven't seen it already. But anyway, to do that, you do Control O to write out. So if I do hold down my Control key and I press O, it pops up with a file name to write, and I got test.c, so I just press enter on that. To exit out, Control X down here. Those about the only two ones I got memorized, Control O and Control X, because that's all I really need to use. So I've just created this program here. To compile it, if you just simply type gcc test.c, GCC again is our compiler, our C compiler on Fedora, or on Linux, I should say, maybe all Unix. If I just press enter on that, comes back, really doesn't tell us anything. But if I do an ls, I see it created a file called a.out. If I do an ls-al, gives me a little bit more detail on it. It's executable. Like that right there. We're going to take a look at how to change permissions on that. And that actually might already be 775. But I want it to be 755, just so you get some experience in how to change permissions. To run that, if you do a ./a.out, so it's always ./ and then whatever file it created. Then it prints hello world. If I go back into it, nano space test.c, brings up my program again. And I press the delete key to get rid of that quote. And Control O, enter to save, Control X to exit. If you do your up arrow over and over, it'll go through a history. If I ran that, appears to work because we haven't compiled it yet. So you have to remember it's kind of like two distinct steps here. You have to edit it, save it, compile it, and then run it. So it's not like code blocks where you just click that one button. You don't even have to save it, just click the button. So we're going to compile it with our GCC, if I can find it. That's weird. There it is. Error, stray. It's real meaningful. So what in the world did I do wrong? Printf hello world /n. Okay, so if I ran that,
You're missing a quote mark.
What'd I say?
You're missing a quotation.
Right. Now, what I really need to answer to those, where's that output window? Why do I keep forgetting that each time?
Is it logs?
Where's it at?
View logs.
View logs? Yeah, you're right. It is logs. I don't know why I can never remember that. Okay. If I scroll up here, error undeclared. First use in this function. First use in this function. Why don't I see this? Huh. Oh, what I was trying to show you is it's running the same compiler, maybe a different version. So the same error commands you see here are the same ones that you would see over here. So if you're thinking when you're running this in Linux, you're thinking, well, this is the most unuser-friendly thing there is. No, it isn't. Those are the same items you get over here. Although, actually, doesn't Linux look like it gives you more detail? has all these squigglies here and the little pointers and so forth. And you lose that over here, don't you? So I never would have guessed that. I would have guessed that this would be more meaningful. So when you're writing your program over in Linux, you have to interpret what this says. And I'm guessing that, and I don't know for sure, but one of these probably refers to your line number, 4 or 11. Of course, we only have one line of code in there, so we know where it is. But actually, they all say 4, don't they? Except for this one. That's 5. So I'm guessing this first one is actually your line number. That's meaningful. If you had a long program, I'm not going to have you write a long program in this class, but if you had a long program with 100 lines, you need to know where the issue's at. Okay, now if I go back in and correct my mistake, like that. There's some way to see what line you're on. Current position, Control C. Let me see if that's line 4 of 8. Again, that's kind of useful if you got 100 lines of code. But as I do my down arrow, do you see it updating? It's not updating, is it? I'd have to do a Control C again. So anyway, it's as good as it gets in terms of when I say this is the best. This is the best. Some people might argue with that, but let's see. Save, yes. Okay, now, so if we do our GCC now that I've corrected the mistake, we see no message pop up, which means it worked. Now, if you want to name it a certain name, you do GCC test.c. Let's see if I can remember this. I think it's O. C, I think, creates an object. O for output. And test prog. And now if I do an ls-al to see everything, I see my test prog there. So that's way you can control what you want to call it. This is how they could write a utility for Linux. You know, obviously a better one than Hello World. But you create that, you give it the appropriate rights, put it over in the bin folder, and you got your program up and running. I could, if I was clever enough, and I'm not clever enough, I'm not a hacker, not in any sense. But if I come over here, I could give it a name ls. And now if I do an ls-space-al to show everything, here's this ls program. And so if I could copy this to the appropriate folder, then whenever you did an ls, you would run my program. So you'd run Hello World. So again, that opens up some security issues. You have to have your rights correct on a Linux server. We use Linux servers a lot for our mail at IFR. If you're managing your own email, Linux is very robust. It doesn't break down and so forth. We had one individual, and he's super sharp on Linux. You know, my knowledge is like real minimal amount there, and his is, you know, this huge amount of what he knows. And the company that bought IFR was going to move everything over to I forget what Windows calls their mail server, Exchange, and he knew how many headaches that would be, and I think he left IFR briefly over that because he knew it'd be a headache, and it was. He I think eventually went back to IFR, but again, Linux is just very powerful, and he realized that, and administration didn't. Administration saw, okay, well, Linux is hard. You got to know all these weird commands and so forth. You know, Windows is click here, and you're, you know, so forth. It's easy, but again, it's not secure. Is everybody good on how to create a C program via terminal? How to compile?
GCC is how you compile.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can you tell if a program is executable?
If you do an ls-al, there's three particular rights here. Let's see if I can get them right. First one is a current user, like this is your rights. The next one is the group, like if you're a member of a group. And then the last one is the world. And to change the rights on that, like if I wanted to be able to run the program but nobody else. It's a program called change mod. And then you see if I get this right. Change mod 700 and ls. Now let me do an ls-al. You notice ls now has RWX, read, write, executable rights for the user. That's me. But nobody else can even see it. So that's where you can lock it down when nobody can see it.
Okay.
When I would create Perl programs, back when I was doing web design for, I had my own business for a while where I created web pages and for people, and I wrote my own Perl programs and so forth. I always used, and that's why it's so popular with me, 755. And what that gives us is read, write, execute for the user, which you want that for yourself. You don't want to lock yourself out. And then for the rest of the world, everybody else, they only have read and execute rights. If you did not set it up so they could execute, then somebody that's running your web page, that's running that Perl program or Python or whatever you've created in Linux, they can't run it. It'll give them an error. So you have to set up your rights in order to do that. Sometimes it goes there by default. You can actually use C to off of a web page. So you can have your web page run a C program, passing in parameters, doing all of that. I played with it. It's been many years ago. That was about 20 years ago. I was playing with that, seeing if you could do it. Just because I was curious. I think I created a Python program. I created a C program. I heard from Southwind, the people that were doing the managing the hosting. They maintained the servers and everything. They emailed me the day after I created the C program, and they said, you need to remove that. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, I'll remove that because they're threatening to, cancel my account and so forth. The reason why is this ls, for example, here, it's what's called a binary. And if I try to do a cat on it, cat is how you list a file. And I'll show that with a good file here in a minute. But if I do that, all you see is a bunch of weird characters. And it's a security issue. What is this binary doing you have on your own account? Are you using it to hack in somewhere? Are you using it to send spam? What is it exactly? So that's why they had a process to run every night looking for binaries. And if they spotted a binary that shouldn't be in the folder, then they'd contact you. They like you to have scripting languages. A scripting language is like Python, Perl. Let me clear that. And not that this is a scripting language, but when you do a cat space test.c, you see exactly what it's doing. And that's why Perl has kind of gone by the wayside. I keep saying Perl because that's what I did quite a few years ago. Python is a popular one now. I couldn't even tell you what all the scripting languages are. Let's see, current CGI scripting languages. Perl, tool, command language, TCL, C language. Not supposed to use that. Though you can use it. It's one in the list. C++, Visual Basic, Java. I'm not sure why I went to .hu. Was that Hungary? Probably got some virus now. Should watch where I go and click. Perl's, again, kind of gone by the wayside. But compiled languages is the one they don't want you to use because they want to be able to see, what you're doing. Python is one that's really become popular for CGI. What this allows you to do is the CGI allows you to, if you've had introduction to computer science, you've worked with HTML at all, you can create a form and you can enter information in on the form. That information then runs your program on the server, your C program, your Python, whatever, passing those as parameters. So the program I asked you that I'm going to put out there for you to create, where I have you pass in 2 command line arguments, you're going to pass those in just from the terminal. But they could actually come in from a web page. So, the next step on this would be to, create a web page where you have 2 text boxes and you're passing that in when you run that C program. I was going to see if they Perl. Yeah. Does anybody know why Perl is not that popular anymore? It's hard. People don't like hard. It's just a challenge sometimes to do things in it. Doing something in Python is so much easier if you use that language. Here's Python. You can probably almost look at some of the code that goes along with Python and know exactly what it does. It's just very, very user friendly. Okay, now shell script. What a shell script is it runs commands for you. For example, this program I just created was called testprog. And how you run it is you do the slash or the / testprog. And then that runs it. Well, if you want a little bit easier way of running it, you could do nano space, and I'll create a test.sh. And I put my command in here. So the / testprog, like that. And that'll run that program. I could put other commands in here. I could do cd / cd/. That'll go to my root. I could have it do an ls at that point. So a whole slew of things you can do within a shell script. It's actually so powerful that it really is its own programming language. Now, if I do a Control-O to save that, and Control-X, now my memory is just, I think, is really faded. Because it used to be that you could not run this test.sh without setting it up to be executable, or I thought, but you can. If you do the sh space test.sh, it'll run those 3 commands I put in there. And now if I do a pwd, I'm probably, no, I guess it left me here. Okay, no, it won't change it for your where you're running it from, because it creates its own little shell environment, own little operating system bash. I think we've got our test.sh. I think you can even do the / test.sh. Let's see if that works. Okay, I'm lying. How about .test.sh? Yeah, and that runs it too. So there's a couple different ways you can run it. You can either do an sh space test.sh, or you can do a no such file or directory. Where am I? Now that is strange. Oh, because the SH creates its own bash shell. And so that's why it set my directory back to where it was. The dot did not do that. Okay, so that's the difference between them. Okay, well, I want to go home. So it's CD and then that. Where am I? Okay, and then C programs. C programs. There it goes. So that was a dot, but the SH, test.sh, now I'm still in the same location. So probably the one I'd recommend you, if you're going to do a lot of playing with it, is probably the SH. That creates its own separate bash shell that then returns everything back the way it was when it finishes. That's what I'm talking about on the this part of the project, where you have your two programs, and you create a shell script that will run both of these compiled programs. So nothing more exciting than what I just showed you. You know, you have your dot slash your name of your program and your dot slash name of your program. We're not going to go into it in this class, but I will talk about it briefly. If I can remember which ones I was working on the other day. It's got wildcards, by the way, asterisk.sh. That's a wildcard. And March 5th, case example, force.sh, checking it.sh. Let's look at force. How you can look at a file is cat space force.sh. This will view a file. This is a program I wrote within a shell script to calculate force, assuming I got this one to work. I wasn't always successful getting them all to work. So nanoforce.sh. This tells the location of your, what we're in here is like a bash shell, kind of like its own little environment type of deal. And so that tells the location of it. This reads in from the user. It prompts them for the input mass and then puts it into a variable called mass. This reads it, puts it into a variable called ACC. And then this down here, mass dot times acceleration, that's, remember, force equals m times a, if you're taking physics. So I multiply these two together. This asterisk here, I believe, changes it to a number, I believe. Echo prints it, but then this asterisk here then assigns it back to force. And so then it'd print that. If I were to run this, input mass, I put in 5, acceleration I put in 2, comes back and tells me 10, multiplies them together. Real exciting program. Reason why I'm showing this is so you understand why Wichita State wants you to know a little bit about Linux before you get there. You see this space right here? I think that has to be there. I think that it took me forever to figure that out. Let me take that out and see if I'm right. It's been 24 hours, so I forgot everything from yesterday. Each day's a new learning experience. Let's try that. I lie. There was something real picky on this, where you had to have the space there. Maybe no spaces. Maybe I had space there. Yeah, command not found. That's what I got. Must have got that for 15 or 20 minutes before I figured out that silly thing. Any other programming language, that would not be an issue, would it? Space there, who cares? But shell scripting is very picky. That one program there, four lines. If you told me it took me 15 or 20 minutes yesterday, it wouldn't surprise me. It was a beast. I mean, I was Googling and everything, you know, to get what am I doing wrong type of deal. Okay, I'll exit out there. Let's see if I fixed it. 3, 2. Okay, that's fixed. Questions on terminal so far? Like I say, I'm not going to teach you every command on that. Nice part about these is you get these created. There's a utility called cron. Assuming I could spell it. How in the world? Cron. Linux cron. Cron tab. Jeez. How to use cron? No, it is cron. Limiting cron access. There's a way you can run it dynamically. You don't have to edit files. But obviously, I'm not remembering how to do it. Either that or I don't have rights because I'm not the root. Maybe it is cron tab. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. It's been quite a while since I scheduled anything. But this is if you got a shell script that you have created and you want it to run at midnight every night. For example, I think it was wasn't last weekend. I think it was the weekend before. I was getting caught up in grades, and the reason why is because they got a nighttime process they run here that checks and see who hasn't updated their grades, and then we get these nasty emails saying, "Hey, update your grades." They have a way to tell who hasn't taken attendance, and it's a nighttime process they run. Now I don't know if it's Linux, a Linux program or script that they're running at night, or if it's some kind of Windows. Because I think you can do a similar thing with PowerShell, maybe. Maybe they work with PowerShell ever. No. Let me see if I'm lying to you. PowerShell can schedule. PowerShell for scheduling, for scheduled tasks.
You can do shell scripts in standard Windows command prompt, can't you?
You can, but they're not as powerful. Yeah, you definitely can. Yeah, manage scheduled tasks. You can do that in PowerShell. Yeah, in Windows, if you come down here and you type CMD, although they're taking the fun out of it, used to be a program called edit, where you could type edit runme.bat. Edit's now gone. You can type notepad runme.bat, but then that takes away from the fun of doing it all in the command prompt. And you can do a dir, redirect it into test.txt. Gosh, it's been so long. Do another dir, append it on test.txt, I think. I was going to do a Control-O to save. What am I doing? Click File, Save. Ooh. So I got, which one did I just create? RunMe. And you type RunMe. And you see you got your file created. So yeah, you got limited ways you can do that on here. Definitely not the power that Linux does. But yeah, you're correct. You can do some of this on here. And I think PowerShell even has it probably does everything Linux does. Wouldn't surprise me. I haven't played with PowerShell. It's its own little programming language, I think. But it's like, yeah, where you can schedule a task to run and so forth. But that's a big thing, because you don't want to be up in the middle of the night running programs. You want some way to schedule them. And Windows has been really weak on that. You can buy packages that'll do it. We wrote one at IFR. So we wrote a Windows program that would run other Windows programs at night, because we needed some things run before the users came in the morning. And that's, I say, Linux is it's built in. You can schedule something to run, and you can have it email you. You can have it probably send you a text now. It wouldn't surprise me, because there's. Let's see if Pine is on here. No more Pine. How about Elm? No Elm. How about Mail? Install package MailX to provide command mail. I'm going to say no. But what this would do is, now that I found one, is you could put this in your shell script such that it emails you the results of what happened. So that you can even put little if statements in there. If that error file is there, then email David in the middle of the night. And if you have your phone set up, with an email address, then this will fire you off, and then you'll receive a text in the middle of the night saying, hey, your process failed. And you can go and fix it and get it up and running for the users to come in the next day. That may sound like, well, why do I want to come in at 2 a.m.? It's preferable than coming in at 8 o'clock and have 500 users screaming at you. You'd rather lose an hour or two of sleep and get it up and running. Nobody knows the difference, especially if it's something you screwed up in the first place. Forgot to do something, then you want to know that. Okay. Now that's pretty well what I want to show you on the terminal. Again, remember the change mod 755, and then whatever your file is. I don't know where I am. PWD. Okay, C programs. Change mod 755, and then test program. Now, these are things I want you to demonstrate in your video you create. To show me you did your permissions, you could do this change mod there, or you could just do the ls-al to demonstrate, hey, I just changed it to 755. There's other ways of doing the permissions. I'm not very good at it. I like the numbers. 7 means everything's set. Read, write, execute. 5 means read and execute set. There's 0, which means nothing. You can do nothing. Like if I do a change mod 000 on ls, you see I don't even have read, write, and execute on that. I think I can still change it. Let's see. Yeah, I can change it back. 3 is a number. I don't know what 2 does, to be honest. Change mod 222 ls. Two is just all right, all the way across the board. There's a user-friendly way of doing this. Let me see if I can remember it. Like on that ls, if I want to add read, I do and I probably won't get this right, user plus r ls. See how it added the R for just the user? I think you have to do G for group. I don't know what the world is. Minus R would take away the read privileges. A lot of people like this because they figure that's more user-friendly, remembering 7 is read, write, execute. 5 is read, execute. 3 is probably execute. Really, is it that hard just to try it, though? No. So that's why I prefer it than doing this. But some people like that. And like I say, I don't know how you do the world. Group would be like that, I believe. LS now has read on the group. Beauty of having the internet. As a computer science, you should live on Google. Linux, what is the world in ChangeMod? How to set file permissions using ChangeMod. Wikipedia sometimes is worthless when you're talking about computer stuff. The world is A for all, I guess. I guess that makes sense. So again, how long did it take me to find my answer there? Couple of seconds, right? Yeah. Why sit there and try everything under the sun when you can Google and come up with the answer? It's probably one of the few positions that you'd get where it's acceptable to be sitting there on Google, a good percentage of the day, because you can find out your answers quickly and then you can move on. Now, if you're on Facebook, that's probably different. Unless your goal is to do the marketing for your company. Okay. Now over here in our activities, like I say, we've got our files. Also under show applications, remember we had our text editor. If you do not have the Nano program and you can't install it for whatever reason, you go into this text editor first, create your program. And is it behind? Oh, there it is. And I'm not good enough with this to know how to make it bigger so you can actually see it. Create a new document. I'm not sure if I see a way. What's this say? Print. I don't see any way of making it bigger. Tab width. Plain text. Boo C. That's interesting. That implies that it would at least color code your C. What if I do change it to C? Assuming I know how to do it. Double click. C. Okay. Include, see if I can remember it. Standard io.h. And that isn't even right. What goes first? It's int, wasn't it? I'm trying different things. I'm not seeing anything increase the size of that. Not saying it isn't there, but it's a very basic editor. Hopefully you can at least see that a little bit. Printf, hello world. That's C. Plain text. Okay, it does do the coloring for you. So if you are using this, that gives you your coloring. I wouldn't recommend this. I'm going to show you another editor if I can fumble enough to actually create a file with it. But again, the goal is to going on to know how to do text-based. You won't necessarily have a GUI. Now to save it, click Save over here. Again, you got your documents, downloads. Home is like that CD and then a little curly thing, squiggly. What is that called? tilde. And you see that I actually have my C programs folder here. So I can double click on that. You could also right click, and you see you got different options here. If you want to rename a folder, show time, sort folders, show hidden files. Remember the ls space dash al? The dash A, I think, was the part that showed hidden files. This is how you do it here. Anyway, I'm going to double click on C programs, and up here it says checkingit.sh. I must have clicked something. I want to call this test2.sh. Click my save button. I'm a lot better at Nano than I am this. I'm not very good with this. Okay, so I got this saved. You see I got my text editor here. If I was really good on Fedora, which I'm not, I'd be able to easily go back to the terminal. Some of you probably know how to do it, but I just have to move this out of the way because I'm not that good. Maybe Alt-Tab. Look at that, Alt-Tab. I'll forget that tomorrow. But I come over here. This is now called test2.sh. Let's try that again. Save as. I don't know why I named it test2.sh. You're probably wondering the same thing. Test2.c. It's a C file. Click save. Now it's called test2.c. I come back over here. I do a pwd, make sure I'm in the right folder, and I do my gcc test2.c-o and another program. And looks like it ran, and I do a / another program to run it. And I didn't do a /n after the hello world, but you see the hello world at the beginning of my prompt there. So that's how you'd use this to do that. Questions on that, editor?
What does the -o do in the console?
Oh, that's your output. So that's where you can tell it what the output file should be called. If you don't specify that, it'll always put it as a.out. So, okay, so I'm going to close that. Oh, by the way, if you have your activities here and you got your files here, after you create your first one, you can just go directly here, get your home, and if I was good at this, and I could test.d, test2, what did I call it? I thought I called it test2.c, didn't I? Maybe not. Oh well. If I open up the one I can see, test.c. Well, I'm not in my C programs, am I? Okay, so if I change the C programs, wherever that's at, there it is. There it is. Test2.c. I can double click this and it brings that up. And now you could do your file, or not your file, the 3 little lines, and save as. And save it as another name. So you don't have to keep on going to the other location. You can do it all from your filing cabinet. That's probably not a bad place for a 10-minute break. So let's we're about halfway through the clock, over halfway. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then I'll show you V, however you say it, as much as I can, and then I'll bring up some code some people have sent me, and we'll take a look and debug it. Probably won't get into the next chapter tonight, which is okay because I think you'd be challenged enough to set all of this up. And that's a goal, is that you, as somebody going to computer science or engineering, should be able to research, look for errors that happen, and figure out what's going on. What have you installed wrong? So, but we'll start again in 10 minutes. I remember my first exposure to Unix was FreeBSD, and has a little devil mascot, and they got little humorous stories about how they'd be wearing a little mascot and going to a little cafe somewhere. They'd have people come up to us and say, "We don't appreciate you, having the devil on your jacket." And it's just a mascot. It's just a mascot. But it really was the devil. I hated that program. I had to set it up for an intranet, and that was a nightmare. I had to get front page extensions working so everybody in the company that needed to publish information could use front page to, in a user-friendly manner, publish their web pages. And I could not get them to work. I think I spent a week on that. I finally went to my manager and begged her, said, "Can I call Microsoft?" Because I figured it's a Microsoft product, and that was what the issue was. She finally relented, and they had me fixed in about 40 minutes. I could have spent 6 months trying to get those front page extensions to work. And it's just, Linux is hard. Unix in general is just hard. And Microsoft, I couldn't believe how easy that was for them to tell me what to do. The same thing in setting it up on IIS. I went into a screen, and there was a little checkbox that said enable front page extensions. I clicked that little checkbox. That was it. It's just like, and that shows you, here I've spent this entire week, could not figure it out. I had to call Microsoft. Here's IIS, allows just one click, and then you're up and running. But again, it's a matter, do you want to be safe and secure on your server, or you just want it to be, what's that Mel Gibson movie, Thunderdome? Everything's chaos, and yeah. I asked Microsoft, I said, is the reason why, this is so challenging to get set up is because front page was a Windows product, and, I'm trying to do it on a Unix box, Unix server. And he said, no. He said, well, actually, front page was originally a Unix product. So we bought it, and we put it on Windows. And he pointed out how I could tell by some of the naming of the directories. And so he says it was meant for Unix to begin with, Linux. I think front page is about gone. I think Dreamweaver is this new replacement. One of them, anyway. No, I lie. Dreamweaver is a Adobe product. Yeah, I don't know what the replacement is for front page, unless they just went out of the business. What was the replacement for a front page? replaced by since discontinued Microsoft Expression Web. Then replaced again by SharePoint Designer. Front page was replaced by Microsoft Expression Web and SharePoint Designer. But these two products were also discontinued in favor of web-based version of SharePoint Designer. Discontinued HTML editor freeware for creating and modifying Microsoft SharePoint. I think they got something. I'm just not sure what it is anymore. Almost like a web-based SharePoint Designer.
Isn't Publisher the program that does that?
It will save as a web page, yes, but it doesn't have. You mean Publisher? If you mean Publisher, it doesn't have all the parts that manage your website. With CSS, you can push out like a style to 1,000 web pages, and if you have it set up right, you just have to change one file, and it actually propagates over to all those web pages. But a good web design tool will do that for you, such that you can set everything up with this template. Basically, that's kind of what a CSS is. So. But yeah, all of them actually will save in HTML format. So maybe that's why they figured it didn't need to be necessarily a separate product. There, I was screwing off, and I could have been studying, so I didn't look too bad in class. What was I doing? Let me study real quick. I think I got like 1 minute. Lagmuster. I wonder if that's a good one to go to. Vi Editor, that's an education site. .w to write. How do I edit? It'd be like some kind of Einstein to know all the different commands. You switch Vi to input mode by entering any of several Vi input commands in the next section. Once in input mode, any character you type is taken to be text, is added to the file. You cannot execute any commands, so you exit input mode. To exit input mode, press the escape. Maybe just doing the I. We'll try that. Maybe Vi isn't even installed and I want to worry about it. So actually, I'm not on VM, the VirtualBox. I'm sure I can. So I want to edit a file. If I do a VI space, and test3.c. Comes up in this. To go into insert mode, I think it was to press an I. You really need a cheat sheet in front of you when you do this. It says insert before the cursor. So I think I do an I. So we type I. And I think I'm in insert. So pound include stdio.h. Int main void. Why I didn't go back? Okay. That, and then I'll do printf hello world /n. Escape takes you out of input. Now I think you can do your arrow keys to go up. Now since I'm not in insert, or not input, but insert mode, if I type anything, it won't let me type anything. I go to where I want to insert something, and if I type, like if I'm right here, and if I type I, then I can come down here. Another line. Escape, again, takes you out of insert. Maybe this isn't as horrible as I'm envisioning it. And then I think you have to do a :W to write. So you do :W. I don't know if you need to put the name on there or not. Colon. And see, it's down there at the very bottom of the screen now. If I do W, let's see. Okay, it wrote it. How do I exit? :Q, maybe? Write to file and quit. :WQ. Quit without saving changes. :Q exclamation. I've already saved it, so I guess it doesn't matter, but :WQ. So :WQ. Okay. So then I can do my GCC test3.c-o program 3 ls-al, and you see your program 3. I would play with Vi. No, worst case, if you hang it up, you just click this X up here and it closes your terminal window. You're not going to screw anything up. Then open up a new terminal window. To edit a file, you do vi test3.c, put the file name in, brings us up. All these commands are such that you can, without going into insert mode, you can, guess that caret goes to the beginning of the line. So I'm right over, I don't know where I'm at. I'm right here. If I do a caret, where's caret? Shift 6, that goes to the beginning of my line. $sign goes to the end of your line. Forward a character. Delete commands. If where I'm at, delete the end of line, big D. So I'm right here. Let's say I use my arrow keys, go over here. If I do big D, shift D, see how it gets rid of that? So it's so easy to screw something up. If you type the wrong letter, and all of a sudden, whoa, it's gone. I don't even know what the undo is. It's not Control Z. Let's see, Control F. Undo. U, undo last change. Big U, undo all changes on line. So it looks like if I just do a U, it'll put it back. So, it's not horrible, but you just have to have that cheat sheet in front of you if you're doing that. Now, if you do everything in insert, then you come here and I think you can press your delete, and clean that out and so forth. But I don't like the fact that if I just type the wrong letter here, all of a sudden, whoa, what did it just do? Type of deal. U, no, escape, big U. Put it back the way it was. Anyway, control or colon WQ to save it and exit out. But that's Vi. Questions on that editor? There's a lot of editors available on it. I'm just showing you 2 on terminal. Vi has been around forever, if I'm saying it right. If I look at all the list of mail programs on Linux, these are GUI based. Mutt, Hiri, Alpine, top 9 best email clients for Linux. And you're sitting there, why do they got all this? You don't got all this in Windows. You don't got like a gazillion ways to do something. Why would you want to have Vi? Well, you can automate it. The neat part about Vi is that you could put it into a script. And if you're clever with it, which I'm not, you could have it edit a file in the middle of the night. So you could clean a file up. Maybe you might search for something and delete that, or I don't know what you'd want to do with it. I never have programmed that in a shell script, but it gives you the power to do that. These mail clients, if I type mail there and I actually say install, enhanced implementation of the mailx command. The following packages have to be installed. Hopefully it doesn't take forever. No mail. So, gotta type xmail then? No, mail. No mail for OS boxes. So again, looks like it's probably command driven. So if I want to send you a mail message, maybe I type mail space address. David Hayes at cali.edu. And I won't get this right because -s subject, and I don't know if I need quotes here. Get to work. Let's try that. Didn't like something. Send options without primary recipient specified. But if I would learn these commands, what I can do is I could set up my spam program. I sit there and go through 1,000 email addresses sending emails. If you try to do the same thing in Outlook, Outlook prevents you from doing it. I've tried. What it'll do is it'll bring up, if I got 1,000 people I want to email, it'll bring up 1,000 separate messages. And it'll do that. It'll fill everything in, but then I have to individually go click each one. Send, 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 send. The idea is they wanted to safeguard their product so people wouldn't use it for spamming. You don't have the same thing on Linux. So this is something you have to worry about if you're maintaining a server. Is somebody using your server to spam? Like I say, I don't have any kind of clue on what those should be. But again, the power behind it. Let's see if there's anything else I need to mention. Talk about that. Although you don't have to do it very often. If you need to reboot, again, the power is up here like I indicated. You should, like I say, you shouldn't need to reboot because now at this point, if I close this window, It takes a while. If I close this, it'll ask me if I want to suspend it or shut it down. If I do the drop down here, there's also a power option here where you can choose different items. You can restart your guest. It's best to do it via the operating system. But if I just close that, it'll say, do you want to suspend or power off? I always choose suspend because next time I run this program, I don't want to wait. Not that it takes a whole lot of time to reboot for this, but if I click suspend, you might say, well, that wasn't fast. It's gone. Well, not really.
Suspend it when you start to utilize your system resources?
No. So once it gets done, it will for a while because it's sitting here working. But once it gets done, it won't end anymore. Well, it seems like sometimes I have to click it twice. Maybe I'm just not being patient. See, there it goes. It's saving a virtual machine state. And now it's off, which means it's not using any more resources. But next time I click into it, it'll be exactly where I left off. So I like it for that reason. Anyway, that gives an overview of this. And again, part of this will be doing some research. Part of it I've showed you how to do, how to create a compile program, how to work with a terminal. Delete files, by the way, is RM, I believe. If that's not right, Google it. It's easy. You go to Linux, how to delete files, and you'll see which command it is. Change permissions we looked at. That was a change mod. Again, I put this in here. The Windows version is fine because I wouldn't subject anybody to torture with Vi. But if you are going on, especially Wichita State, make sure you know how to use a terminal-based editor. Nothing like sitting, and that was where I had to fumble around with Vi because I knew it kind of existed, but I'd never really used it because I'd used Pico. Now I'm sitting there at Wichita State in their lab trying to get, I think that was Modula 3. I took a class in that for whatever reason, programming language. And I'm sitting there trying to edit my program, and there was no editor. Well, this is just great. There's no way to edit it. And then I finally remembered Vi, and I had to fumble around. Okay, now let me bring up a code that was sent to me. Okay. And just makes it easier for me to read. Because my eyes aren't very good. Okay. That's probably nothing. Please enter in 20 numbers ranging from 10 to, okay, so 12, 12, 15, 23, 12, 12. Oops. It says 5 numbers though, isn't it? Yeah, 5 numbers. Okay. Let me try it again. 12, 12, 23, 12, and 31. Now print an array. Okay. This is the part you're talking about. You wanted to print, not print duplicates. Now I won't put the code in here to sort it. But you take your bubble sort code, you put that in there. Then what you can do, very easy, you say for x1, what if I can reuse that? Probably can. x1 is equal to 1, x1 is less than size, x1 plus plus. And so I'm going to loop through my array, and I need a previous value. And assuming they're all integers, like my previous value. I'm going to check to see if it's equal to my previous value. And so initially, since it can't be 0, I'll just set equal to 0. And I'm going to check here if my current array is a num_a my current array. Okay. If num1 or num_a x1 is equal to my previous value, I don't want to print it. So actually, probably I'd want a not equal to my previous value. So if it's not equal to my previous value, then I want to print it. So I would do a printf and %d/n num_a x1, like this. Now I'm gonna enter my numbers in numerical order, so you see that we'll see if it works first, and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so if it's not equal to my previous value, then I want to print that. And at this point, no matter what, I want to say my previous value is equal to num_a. So that's what it'll set it each time. Okay, so now if I run it, I do 12, 12, 12, 21, 21. Not sure why I put the space there, but see how I printed 12 and 21? And it doesn't print any duplicates. Now, what makes this work is the fact it has to be sorted. But if you add that code in I gave you in class for the bubble sort, just put that right here. Bubble sort code. Then that'll fix your duplicate problems. Now it's a harder issue if you have to actually save it back in the array. And I'd have to do some more thinking on that. That's not a short question. But I think they just want you to print the non-duplicated values, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so this is all they're wanting right here.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions on that one, or that was it?
All the time.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions over anything in general? Well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and don't forget next week is spring break, so I won't be here. So don't sign on. Don't come down to Wellington. Now I am going to be here Tuesday at 6 o'clock at Wellington, holding a Microsoft Microsoft Windows 10 class. So if you're wanting to know more about the operating system, you can attend that. Probably, I suspect all of you know how to navigate around Windows 10, but if you don't, and you're bored, come on down. But otherwise, have a good spring break. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording.